11 lawyers failed, but the cleaning lady showed the solution in just 2 minutes. What did the millionaire CEO see in her? A skyscraper office at night. Rain blurs the windows. A man in a suit stares at a resignation letter on his desk. A woman's voice echoes. You said I was just a tempie, but I saved your company. And then you broke my heart. She was invisible. Until he finally looked. By then, it might have been too late. Do you want to build a life where everything's negotiable except love? The billionaire's quiet assistant. The first time Connor Blake saw her, she didn't say a word. She stood in the corner of his 23rd floor office, holding a red pen and a folder with no logo. Just a black binder clip and silence. She didn't flinch when he barked his fifth demand of the morning. She didn't laugh when his executive VP made a joke about babysitting another tempie. She just stood there, waiting. That morning, the sky over Chicago was low and gray, pressing like a hand on the city's shoulder. Connor had already fired one assistant before 9 a.m. He wasn't in the mood to learn a new name. He didn't ask for her resume. Didn't care. Until she did something no one ever had. She corrected him, subtly, gently, almost invisibly. A contract he was about to sign had been printed and stacked, ready for approval. But on the final page, where it referenced a cross-border acquisition, Nora had quietly underlined one sentence in red and left a sticky note. This phrasing violates new FTC language. See ruling 48B, revised November. Risk of legal challenge. He paused. No assistant had ever noticed legal phrasing, let alone corrected it. He walked over, picked up the document, and looked at her for the first time. Really looked. She wore a navy cardigan, 2 sizes too big, and shoes that looked older than some interns. Her hair was in a simple braid, no makeup, no name tag, just calm eyes and a quietness that somehow made the noise of the office seem louder. Who told you to do this? He asked. She met his gaze evenly. No one. Do you have a law degree? Almost. 3 years of night school. Then life got expensive. And you work where? Temp services. Admin pool. I take jobs where I can. He looked at her like she was a glitch in his system. Like something didn't compute. You read contracts for fun. No, she said softly. I read them so I don't get crushed by them. That afternoon, Connor didn't fire her. He didn't thank her either. He just walked into his board meeting holding the corrected draft and didn't say who fixed it. That night, while the city flickered through his penthouse windows and rain smeared the lights into watercolor, Connor lay in bed thinking about the woman with the red pen. She didn't brag. She didn't flinch. She didn't belong. And yet, somehow, she was the first thing that had felt real in a long, long time. Meanwhile, across town, Nora Evans walked up 3 flights of stairs with a bag of groceries in one hand and her daughter's Spider-Man lunchbox in the other. She kissed Lila goodnight, heated a can of soup, and opened a thick legal book she'd bought secondhand at a church sale. As her daughter slept in the next room, Nora studied the contracts. She had no degree to argue in court, but every right to understand. Because once upon a time, her husband overdosed with her tuition check still on the kitchen counter. And because no one had taught her how to survive, but she had learned anyway. What neither of them knew was that this temporary position would change everything. Not because she was brilliant, though she was. Not because he was rich, though he was. But because both of them were broken in ways they never said out loud. And because sometimes the most life-changing partnerships begin in silence. She thought she was invisible. He thought he was untouchable. But love, real love, doesn't ask for permission. It just walks in and waits to be noticed. Chapter 1, The Temp with the Red Pen. Blake Holdings Corporate Tower, downtown Chicago. The wind off Lake Michigan had a bite that morning. Nora Evans pressed her hands deeper into her coat pockets as she stood at the revolving doors of Blake Holdings, the kind of building that reflected its ambition in glass and steel. Her hair was damp, her shoes still squeaked from the walk over slushy sidewalks, and her ID badge had her name spelled wrong, Nora. She didn't correct it. Inside, HR handed her a coffee-stained clipboard and an eyebrow raise. "You're the 6th this month," Lauren muttered. "Don't try to be a hero. Just print, file, and survive." Nora offered a half smile, then quietly walked to the elevator. Floor 23. She stepped into the assistant bullpen, where everything smelled like lemon toner and hurry. Phones rang in rhythms. Shoes clicked. Her small desk faced a thick glass wall. Behind it sat him, Connor Blake, the man Forbes called the ice architect. His back was turned to her, tall, tailored, severe, talking into a headset, voice like wind across frozen asphalt. She sat, waited, listened, then, at exactly 8:59, his voice came sharp over the intercom. "I need the Ruttman merger proposal printed and on my desk in 3 minutes. And if anyone uses size 12 font again, I swear to God." Nora didn't flinch. She opened the draft on her monitor and began to print until something in the third paragraph made her pause. It was a small phrasing error, just a sentence, but she'd seen a ruling last month quietly added to federal guidance that made this clause vulnerable to challenge in a cross-border merger. She hesitated. 3 minutes! Then she did something most temps wouldn't. She corrected it. She slipped a sticky note on the front page in clear, tight handwriting. "Recommend revision on P. 3. FTC guidance. D. 4th. Potential exposure." She slid the pages into a folder and walked them to his office. Knocked once, then stepped inside. Connor barely looked up. Desk. She set them down. As she turned to go, he finally noticed the red ink, the note, the edit. "Who marked this?" Nora turned back. "I did. There's a ruling. You're not legal." "No," she said, soft but steady. "But I studied law 3 years. I still read every night after my daughter falls asleep." He studied her, then not like a person, but like a glitch in his code. Her hair was still damp. Her shoes squeaked faintly. Her cardigan had a missing button, but her eyes didn't flinch. "And why are you working here?" "Because the law doesn't pay single mothers without diplomas," she said. "But temp jobs do." There was silence, long enough for Nora to think she'd just ended her 9 to 5 before it even started. But Connor only nodded, slowly. "Print me the revised version. And coffee black, 2 sugars, no foam." She walked out. That night, Nora tucked Lila into bed with her usual bedtime question. "Did anyone make you feel small today?" "Nope," Lila said proudly. "I told Marcus I am good at math, even if I count on my fingers. You always say, being quiet isn't the same as being weak." Nora kissed her daughter's forehead, then tiptoed back to the living room. She opened her laptop, looked up FTC rulings, then opened the PDF of the Ruttman deal, and whispered to herself as she read legal commentary aloud like lullabies to no one. Meanwhile, Connor sat in his penthouse, untouched scotch in hand, flipping through the corrected merger printout. He read the sticky note again. Small, precise handwriting, zero ego, just truth. He didn't know her, but something about the way she said "I still read" every night after my daughter falls asleep stayed with him. He stared out at the city, a skyline built from risk and ruthlessness, and for the first time in a long time, he wondered what it would feel like to build something or someone up instead of just tearing mistakes down. She didn't want recognition. She just didn't want mistakes to win. She wasn't just efficient. She was educated, precise, hidden, and he had never been good at noticing things that didn't demand attention. Until now. What if the smartest person in the building was the one who didn't belong there. Chapter 2. Ghosts in the Copy Room. Late night office. A quiet neighborhood apartment. The office emptied by 7. Said the sites may p.m. As usual, phones silenced, laughter muted behind elevator doors. The artificial light softened, shadows stretched longer between cubicles. But the printer still hummed, and the copy room lights were on. Inside stood Nora, alone. She didn't clock out, didn't make a sound, just stood beside the copier, watching the pages come out slow and steady, like the heartbeat of a life she wasn't sure she belonged in. Page after page, she printed legal documents not assigned to her mergers, disclaimers, arbitration clauses. She wasn't spying. She was studying. When she was younger, law had made her feel powerful, not because she wanted to win, but because it finally gave language to all the times she had been hurt and had no words. A cramped hospital hallway. Nora, 23, trembling in a cotton hoodie, cradling her newborn in one arm and a folder of debt in the other. A nurse looking away, muttering, "No next of kin, just her." James had died 2 nights before, slumped over a borrowed car wheel, heroin in his veins, his dream of starting a business still in his laptop's ideas folder. They'd said he'd been clean. Nora had believed it, until she didn't. The law professor, who had once praised her legal arguments, didn't return her email. Her scholarship was frozen. And baby Lila, she cried, like she knew something was gone, before she ever knew what life was. Back in the present, a low voice startled her. Still working, she turned. Connor Blake stood in the doorway, jacket over one arm, watching her like she was a puzzle, not threatening, just curious. She shrugged, just catching up. "That file's not yours, I know." He stepped inside, leaned against the door frame. "You read legal reports? Like they're novels." She gave a soft laugh. "Some novels have better endings." Connor stepped forward, picked up a page. "You're not just smart. You're trained. I had 3 years. What happened?" She didn't answer immediately. She always chose her silences carefully. "My husband died, and grief doesn't come with student loan forgiveness." Connor didn't flinch, didn't offer pity, just nodded. "How old were you?" 23. Lila was 3 months old. I dropped out the next week. She smiled gently. Turns out baby formula isn't paid with potential. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was reverent. Later that night, at home, Nora reheated leftover noodles and sat beside Lila's sleeping form. Stroking her daughter's hair, she pulled out an old, weather-softened book, Civil Contract Law, Professor Kessler. Inside, faded yellow, highlighting, marked her fingerprints on every page. One sentence she'd underlined 100 times. "Justice does not require permission to be heard." She whispered it now, barely audible. "I'm still here." Meanwhile, Connor sat in his glass-walled office, city lights like spilled gold around him. He typed her name, Nora Evans, into the firm's secure database. No formal degree. But something popped under an archived legal publication. Midwest Legal Essay finalist. Ethics and Equity. The Forgotten Clause by N. Evans, 2015. He opened it, scanned a paragraph, paused. A society without legal access for the poor is one where power becomes a weapon, not protection. Connor leaned back in his chair. A ghost stirred in his chest. Not from her past, but from his. She had disappeared once, given everything up. But this time, she was going to stay at least long enough to be seen. Connor reads her work and begins to respect her, not just admire her utility. Maybe the law didn't forget her. It just waited for someone powerful enough to listen. Chapter 3. Don't Call Me Sir. Blake Holdings' executive floor, high-stakes meeting room. The boardroom was a battlefield. 10 men, 2 women, 1 ticking clock. Connor Blake stood at the head of the long obsidian table like a general about to wage war with nothing but facts. The merger presentation was a house of cards. Denton Group International, ruthless, was pushing hidden clauses through in the fine print, and Connor's legal team wasn't catching it. His jaw was tight, his voice sharper than usual. We're not signing until I get clarity on Section 6. To Tanya. Where's your memo? Tanya shuffled papers, still reviewing. It's vague, so we agree to terms we don't understand. Connor's tone made 3 interns visibly flinch. That's when he saw her, Nora, standing just outside the glass, holding a tray of water bottles someone had probably handed her. She wasn't supposed to be there. She wasn't invited. But her eyes were scanning the screen, reading the clause. And then she shook her head. Connor's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Miss Evans, step inside. The room turned. Tanya blinked. She's not legal. She has eyes. Doesn't she? Nora stepped forward, calm, despite every gaze on her. You shook your head, Connor said. Why? Nora set the tray down, her voice quiet but firm, because Clause 6(2) is front-loaded with semantic traps. It seems reciprocal, but it isn't. Tanya rolled her eyes. Care to explain? The wording implies equal liability, but uses sequential phrasing. It makes Blake Holdings the fall guy if either party breaches. Even if Denton initiates, the remedy clause was moved 2 pages down, detached from the context. Silence. Board members leaned forward. Someone muttered, "Wait, she's right." Connor was still staring at her. How did you? I read it last night. I wasn't asked to, but I don't sleep well when things feel off. Denton himself laughed lightly on speakerphone. You have your secretary reading our legal work now, Mr. Blake. Connor looked directly into the camera. She's not a secretary. She's the reason we're not walking into a legal ambush. After the meeting, the office buzzed. Rumors, respect, jealousy, admiration. But behind closed doors, Connor pulled Nora aside. You embarrassed my legal team. She raised an eyebrow. Was I wrong? He didn't answer. Instead, he asked, why didn't you go back to finish law school? Nora folded her arms. Because survival got in the way. Because daycare costs more than textbooks. Because my husband died, and I needed to keep the lights on. She leaned closer, voice soft, but searing. And because people like you men, in tailored suits with private elevators, don't usually see people like me unless we're holding something for them. Connor looked down, then back up, his voice quiet for once. I see you now. That night, Nora picked up her daughter from her mother's apartment. In the back seat of her car, Lila asked, were you in court today? Not quite. Nora smiled. But I said something important. Did people listen? Nora paused, then looked at her daughter in the mirror. Yes, and I didn't even have to raise my voice. The next morning, she arrived early. Her badge now had her name spelled correctly, Nora Evans. As she passed Connor's door, he called out, Evans. She stopped. Don't call me sir, he said. Then stop calling me Evans. He smiled the kind of smile that makes a man look less like a CEO and more like a person. Deal. She isn't just noticed. Now she's heard. And he isn't just listening. He's learning. Nora challenges power openly, professionally, and wins. What happens when the man who never trusted anyone begins to trust you too much? Chapter 4. The Woman Behind the Firewall. Blake Holdings Executive Offices. Midweek after hours. The last people to leave the office each night were always the cleaning crew. And Nora, not because she had to, but because the quiet helped her think, and because silence had always been her safest place. It was nearly 9:30 p.m. when she noticed it. A folder labeled Internal Compliance, Level 3, left open on the secure server page. She hadn't clicked on it. Someone else had. Someone who shouldn't have access. Marcus, the junior IT guy, was still in the break room, heating leftover pad thai. He looked up as Nora walked in, a quiet question in her eyes. "Hey Marcus," she said gently. "Did anyone log into Connor's cloud folder today? Specifically the level 3 one?" He froze. Why do you ask?" That was enough. 15 minutes later, Nora sat in Connor's office, lights off, one lamp on, her hands folded, eyes on the floor. Connor stood at the window, barely moving. "You're saying someone on my team tried to copy the Rexton acquisition terms?" Nora nodded. "Who? I'm not sure. But Marcus traced the IP ping. It was routed through a ghost VPN that only 3 people in this building know how to use. One of them works for your general counsel." He rubbed his jaw. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because integrity isn't a matter of department." Silence. "And because," she added, "if this leaks, your entire leverage in the merger disappears." Connor turned around, his face always unreadable, cracked slightly at the edges. "I hired you for your mind, not to clean up after mine." Nora's voice was steady. "You didn't hire me. HR did. You just didn't fire me." The next morning, half the legal team was in quiet panic mode. The general counsel, Ms. Keene, was suddenly on sabbatical. No official statement was released, only a memo about internal restructuring. Connor didn't speak to Nora all day, until 6:45 p.m., when he walked into her tiny office with 2 cups of coffee and set one down. "You were right," he said, sitting across from her, "and you were quiet about it." "Why?" She looked up, tired but calm. "Because loyalty is quiet, and betrayal is loud." He took a breath, noticed how she held her pen between her fingers, like she used to hold her husband's hand tight, careful, scared to let go. "You trust me," he said, more like a realization than a question. She nodded. "Why?" "Because you're not cruel. You're cautious. There's a difference." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "What else do you know about me?" Nora set the pen down and whispered, "You're lonely, but not broken. And the reason your team can't follow you anymore is because they're scared of your silence, not your voice." That night, Connor walked home for the first time in months. No driver, no car, just wind and thoughts. At a red light, he pulled out his phone and searched. What does it mean to trust someone again? No clear answers, just one image that stayed with him. Nora, in the flicker of lamplight, protecting his company, and never asking for credit. Meanwhile, Nora tucked Lila into bed. Lila whispered, "Why do you look tired?" "Mommy." Nora kissed her forehead. "Because I protected something important today." Lila blinked, like a superhero. Nora smiled, tears soft behind her lashes. Something like that. In a world full of ambition, Nora chooses discretion, and it changes everything. Connor realizes Nora isn't just valuable, she's protective of him, of the company, of truth. What do you do with a person who sees you not just your empire and chooses to stay anyway? Chapter 5. Dinner on a deadline. Late night downtown. Nora's small apartment. A city under rain. Chicago rain had a way of soaking the bones and blurring the truth. That night, it fell steady and unapologetic over Blake Holdings as the office lights flickered under the weight of a sudden power surge. The building's silence wasn't peaceful. It was stalled. Nora stood at her desk, looking out the window. The city glowed in blurred streaks. Her computer had gone dark 20 minutes earlier. Just as she'd started rewriting the closing clause for the Rexton merger, a clause no one had asked her to fix, but she knew would fall apart in court if left alone. She reached for her phone, dead. Lightning cracked across the skyline like a whispered warning. That's when she heard him. "You shouldn't be here alone," Connor said, standing in the doorway, his coat draped over one shoulder, his face unreadable. "The backup system's still booting." "Neither should you," she replied softly, shutting her folder. He stepped closer. His tie loosened. For once, he looked like a man, not a brand. "Let me give you a ride home." "I'm fine. I can walk." "You'll drown." She hesitated, then nodded. The car ride was quiet, not uncomfortable, just undecided. Nora sat with her hands folded, rain streaming down the windows. Connor didn't touch the radio. He just glanced over now, and then, like he was trying to memorize something he didn't understand. "You always this calm under pressure?" he asked finally. She looked out the window. "You don't get to panic when you're the only parent." Her apartment was modest second floor, walk up, one bulb flickering in the stairwell, but it smelled like lavender and warm rice. As they stepped inside, Nora's voice changed, softer. "Sorry for the mess." It wasn't messy, it was real. A shoe by the door, a tea mug on the counter, a crayon masterpiece taped to the fridge that said, "My mommy is smart." "This is your world," Connor murmured. She didn't reply. From the bedroom, Lila's voice called out, groggy, "Mommy, it's okay, baby." Nora said gently, "Go back to sleep." Lila peeked from the door, eyes wide when she saw Connor. "Who's that?" Connor blinked, then crouched. "Hi, I'm Connor. I work with your mom. She's kind of a genius." Lila grinned. "I know. She helped me win the spelling bee. I spelled independent." "Did you win?" "Second place." She shrugged. "But Mommy said that's still a win." Connor looked at Nora. "She's right." They ate soup at the kitchen table. 3 chipped bowls and spoons that had seen better days. No candlelight, no flirting. Just silence that meant safety. "This is good," Connor said. "It's just lentils." Nora replied, "No. I mean, this." She looked up. He meant here. With her, with a little girl in socks, 2 sizes too big, and a fridge that hummed louder than the conversation. He meant this. Later, when Lila was asleep and the rain had softened, he stood by the door, coat back on, eyes softer than usual. "I never imagined myself in a place like this. Because it's small. Because it feels like something money can't build." She didn't say anything. "Can I ask you something?" he said quietly. She nodded. "Do you miss it?" "The law?" Nora took a deep breath. "Every night, I miss the language, the logic, the feeling that truth could win if you wrote it well enough." "Then why haven't you gone back?" "Because law school doesn't accept tuition in late-night soup and single mom grit." He wanted to say he'd pay for it, but she was already looking at him like she knew he would, and she didn't want that. He stepped out into the hallway, and for a second, neither of them moved. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For letting me see this. It's just dinner." "No," he whispered. "It's everything I didn't know I missed." And then he left. He came into her world, and instead of judging it, he felt it. This isn't admiration anymore. It's affection, unspoken, uncertain, but undeniable. Maybe he was building empires because he didn't know how to build a home. Chapter 6. The article that broke everything. Blake Holdings' office. A viral blog post. Emotional fallout. It started with a headline, CEOs, Mystery Woman, Blake's billion-dollar brain trust, or something more. Nora read it twice before she breathed. Her name wasn't mentioned, but her face was a blurred photo of her leaving Connor's car, her coat too thin, her expression unreadable. The article didn't accuse, it implied that she had the CEO's ear, that she wasn't just a temp, that something more than paperwork was passing between them. Connor didn't call, neither did HR. But the silence said enough. By ni, it, sir. The legal floor buzzed like a disturbed hive. By 11, Tanya had pulled her aside in the hallway. "Don't take this the wrong way," Tanya said. "But maybe don't sit in on meetings this week." Nora stared at her. "Because someone took a photo without my consent. Because this is corporate, not a courtroom. And perception matters. Nora nodded, then left, quietly, proudly, upstairs. Connor read the article with clenched hands. His office door stayed shut all morning. The headline kept burning into his brain, not because it exposed anything inappropriate, but because it made him realize he didn't know where admiration ended and something deeper began. At 2:07 p.m., HR called him in. "It's about optics," Lauren said, sliding the article toward him. "No one's accusing you, but the board wants distance between you and Miss Evans." Connor frowned. "She didn't leak this. That's not the point." "Then what is?" Lauren sighed. "Your name is on the building. Hers isn't." Nora was packing up her desk when he found her. "Where are you going?" Connor asked. "Home." "That's not necessary, isn't it?" She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time, there was pain behind her restraint. "I didn't ask to be photographed. I didn't ask to be promoted, or praised, or followed home by rumors. I know, but I also didn't ask to be ignored once it got inconvenient." He stepped forward. "This isn't about us. There is no us, Connor." And with that, she placed her company badge on the desk. This time, the name was spelled right. That night, she didn't open her law books. She just sat at the kitchen table, staring at the photo on her phone. Lila came over, tugging at her sleeve. "Are you okay?" Nora forced a smile. "Just a long day." "Is it about the man in the car?" Nora's breath caught. "Do you like him?" She couldn't answer. Lila pressed her cheek to her mother's arm. "You tell me not to give my heart to people who aren't ready to hold it." Nora blinked back tears. "You're right. So, maybe wait or let it go." The next morning, Connor stood at her empty desk. No notes, no trace, no scent of lavender soap, just absence. He opened the file cabinet, found one sticky note inside. It read, "Truth doesn't hide, but dignity walks out when it's not invited. N.E. Admiration becomes liability. Connection becomes complication. And Nora chooses self-respect over proximity." Nora walks away on her own terms. Connor is left with the silence he once preferred, and now can't stand. What if the only person who truly saw you walked away before you had the courage to follow? Chapter 7. Gone is louder than goodbye. Blake Holdings without Nora. Her home. Unspoken echoes. The air in Connor's office had changed. It wasn't colder. It was emptier. No coffee waiting by 8. Cinderella. No post-its with tiny clarifications in perfect handwriting. No subtle cough when he was about to miss a clause in a contract. Just the hum of luxury and the absence of clarity. The morning after Nora left, Connor arrived 2 hours early. Not for a meeting, not for strategy, just to stand in the hallway and stare at her vacant desk. She hadn't taken much, but the silence screamed. He called a tea, asked for her badge logs. Last login, Otter, 38 m. yesterday. Last file she touched, Rexton revision draft. The one she was rewriting before the lights went out. He clicked it open. No track changes, no edits. Just one note in red, tucked at the bottom of the draft. This clause folds under intent. If that matters to you anymore. N.E. That night, Connor didn't go home. He stayed in his office, staring at the rain, reading old emails she'd sent him. None were long, all were precise, and every single one had a softness he'd never seen until now. Meanwhile, across town, Nora sat on the couch, law books stacked, but unopened. Lila had fallen asleep an hour earlier. Carmen, her mother, left a voicemail. "Honey, I saw the article. If you need anything, I'm here. But just so you know, you did the right thing. A man who won't stand beside you when it's hard doesn't deserve to sit beside you when it's easy." Nora wiped a tear before it fully formed. She whispered into the dark, Why did I let myself care? But the truth was, she didn't let herself. She just couldn't stop. At the office, Sarah approached Connor. You okay? Why wouldn't I be? Because you haven't spoken in 2 days. And because you lost the only person here who made you better. Connor didn't answer. Later, in the break room, he found a cup still sitting in the dish rack. Nora's, the chipped one, with a sunflower painted on the side. He picked it up, just held it, for far too long. That night, a message arrived on Nora's phone. Unknown number. I miss your mind. She stared at the screen for several minutes, then deleted it. No reply. Sometimes silence is louder than betrayal. Connor begins to understand. He didn't just lose a brilliant assistant. He lost a mirror, a truth teller, a home. What do you do when the person you pushed away is the only one who ever pulled you forward? Chapter 8. The girl who used to dream in Latin. Flashback to Nora's past. Present-day community legal center. Before she ever cleaned offices or rewrote legal contracts in the dark, Nora had dreamed in Latin, not the spoken kind, but the kind tucked into footnotes of constitutional law, hidden behind habeas corpus and amicus curiae. She used to whisper clauses like lullabies, not because she wanted power, but because justice had once abandoned her family in a courtroom that didn't wait for poor people to catch up. At 20, she sat on the floor of her college library under a flickering lamp, highlighting every sentence in her civil law textbook like it was sacred. She didn't want to change the world, just make it a little less cruel. Now, at 32, she stood in front of a dry erase board at a community legal center tucked between a laundromat and a diner. Her whiteboard said, Tenant, Rights, and Quiet Harassment. She drew a smiley face beside a clause that made her own stomach turn. Behind her sat women with strollers, retired postal workers, 2 teenagers with anxious eyes. Nora wasn't paid for this. She just came every Saturday, like church, outside. Connor Blake sat in his car, engine off, watching through the fogged windshield. He hadn't planned to be there, but the message Sarah left 2 days earlier kept playing in his head. If you really want to understand her, go see where she actually matters. And so here he was, windows rolled up, suit too formal, a stranger in a neighborhood where nothing had a valet. He stepped inside quietly. No one noticed him. Everyone noticed her. Nora stood by the board, explaining legal pressure points, like they were kitchen measurements. If your landlord shuts off heat to push you out, it's called quiet harassment. Illegal in all states, especially under Code 117B. Think of it as emotional eviction. Laughter, pens scribbling, heads nodding. She wasn't performing. She was giving, and the room adored her. Connor leaned in the doorway like a student who forgot to bring a notebook. Afterward, she was wiping the board when she turned and saw him. You shouldn't be here, she said, no smile in her voice. I know. Then why are you? He stepped closer, hands in his pockets, because I don't know how to say sorry for not defending you. So I showed up to listen instead. She raised an eyebrow. And what did you hear? That you're more than the job I gave you. You were already doing the work. I just sat in the corner of your story and thought I was the plot. That almost made her smile. Almost. Mrs. Ramos, a widow in her 70s, walked past and touched Nora's arm. Sweetheart, thank you again. I didn't know. I had the right to challenge that clause, but now I do. Nora nodded. Because you always did. You just didn't know the words. Mrs. Ramos turned to Connor. Are you one of the donors? He hesitated, then nodded. I will be later. As they stood outside by the brick wall, Nora crossed her arms. What do you want? Connor, I want to know the woman who used to dream in Latin. She looked at him, quietly startled. That's not the kind of woman most CEOs fall for. That's because most CEOs fall for power, I'm standing here hoping someone will let me rise toward her. Silence. A different kind. A beginning kind. That night, Connor wrote her a message. No fancy signatures, no corporate fonts, just one sentence. I'm not asking to be forgiven. I'm asking to learn your language. He stepped into her world not to save it, but to finally see it. For the first time, Nora believes maybe he's capable of change. What if the man you walked away from became the man you once hoped existed? Chapter 9, Terms of Use. Blake Holdings conference room. Then Nora's home, quiet Sunday evening. By Monday, the article had faded. The rumors dulled. But Connor Blake, he had not moved on. He didn't send flowers, didn't offer a promotion. He sent a contract, an envelope, hand-delivered. Inside, a new job description. Title: Strategic Advisor, Ethics and Compliance Oversight. Hours: flexible. Clause 5. Wants: may work remotely or from alternate community spaces. Clause 7. 0. Independent judgment is expected. Protected. Clausos. Hurry. Reports directly to the CEO, but only on her terms. Nora sat at her kitchen table. The pages spread like a map of things she never thought she'd have a say in again. The last time she'd held a contract with this much power, it had belonged to someone else. This one felt different, like an invitation. Lila looked up from her coloring book. Is that homework? Sort of. Does it mean you'll be happier? Nora paused. That's what mattered to her daughter, not the title, not the money. I think it means I won't be quiet anymore. On Wednesday, she walked into the Blake conference room mid-meeting. Connor stood, surprised. I'm not here to beg for my desk back, she said calmly. I didn't think you were. I'm here to negotiate the terms of use. She pulled out a folded sheet, her amendments. Clause 1, I don't want a private office. I want a seat at the table. Clause 2, I don't need your protection. I need your public respect. Clause 3, if you ever doubt me again and stay silent, I'll leave. No explanations. Connor studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Accepted. Later that afternoon, Sarah found Connor staring out the window again. She came back. No, he said. She rewrote the contract. And she's the only person in this building who ever asked me to be better without needing me to be anything but honest. Sarah smiled faintly. You're in love with her? I think I've been in love with her since the first time she corrected my contract and didn't ask for credit. That night, in Nora's apartment, she and Lila built a Lego courthouse. Lila pointed to a figure in a tiny red dress. That's the judge. Oh yeah, Nora smiled. Yeah, she makes the rules. And sometimes, she lets people try again. Power isn't being handed to Nora. She's claiming it on her terms. Connor doesn't just accept her return. He respects her conditions for it. Can love survive if it's built like a contract? Or does it need to be lived like a promise? Chapter 10. A clause called love. Blake Holdings Anniversary Gala. Quiet rooftop afterward. The Blake Holdings Anniversary Gala was an annual performance. Crystal glasses, glacier smiles, and champagne that cost more than rent. But this year, something was different. Connor Blake didn't stand behind the podium with a clicker and a brag list. He stood beside someone. Nora. She didn't wear designer. She wore navy. Quiet, elegant, confident. And the name tag pinned to her dress didn't say assistant. It said advisor. Evans. And people whispered. Was she the woman from the article? Was she the lawyer who never passed the bar? Was she why Connor Blake had suddenly started caring about ethics clauses? But when she took the mic for 2 minutes at his request, they stopped whispering. I'm not here to impress you, she began. I'm here because sometimes the smartest voices in a company aren't the loudest. They're just waiting to be trusted. And when she walked off the stage, Connor met her at the bottom of the stairs and whispered, that's the loudest silence I've ever heard. Later, On the rooftop, the city spread out beneath them. Nora leaned on the railing, hair in loose waves, heels in one hand. Connor stood beside her. "I want to ask you something," he said. She glanced sideways. "If it's about dinner, it's a yes. If it's about marriage, too soon. If it's about whether I forgive you, I haven't decided." He smiled. "None of the above. I want you to finish law school, and I want to fund it." Nora stiffened. "We've been over this. Not as a favor, as a clause." "A what?" He reached into his jacket and handed her a folded page. It wasn't typed. It was handwritten. A contract. "Clause 1. You finish law school, not because you need a title, but because the world needs your voice louder. Clause 2. I remain your fiercest advocate, but never your owner. Clause 3. We renegotiate love as needed, with honesty as currency. Clause 4. If I ever make you feel small, you may terminate this contract unilaterally, no penalty. Clause 5. I love you, irrevocably, permanently, no expiration." Nora folded it quietly, tucked it into her purse, like sacred paper. "Okay," she whispered, "but I have an amendment." "Of course you do." Clause 6. Lila gets to cross-examine you every week over pancakes. Connor grinned. "Deal." The next morning, Lila sat across from him at the kitchen table. She squinted. "Serious. Do you love my mom?" "Very much." "Will you still love her if she's smarter than you?" "Especially then." She extended her hand across the table. "Okay, you can stay." Love became real the moment it was rewritten in her language. Trust, not trophies, not power, not redemption. Just two people choosing each other freely. What if the most powerful contract in life is the one that asks nothing but truth? The quiet revolution of love. In memory, soft voice over city lights, as if whispered from the future. Sometimes love doesn't arrive with fireworks or perfect timing. Sometimes it walks in quietly, with a mop in hand, a crayon drawing in a purse, and a memory of a life she once thought she'd never get back. Nora didn't want to be saved. She wanted to be seen. And in a world that measured success in titles, suits, and six-figure retainers, she reminded everyone that value has no dress code. Connor wasn't a villain. He was a man who forgot how to feel, until someone walked into his empire and taught him what integrity looked like when no one was watching. And love, it didn't need flowers or press releases. It needed trust. It needed honesty. It needed one woman who used to dream in Latin and a man willing to learn her language. So, if this story stayed with you, if you've ever felt invisible in a room full of titles, if you've ever carried your worth quietly, waiting for someone to notice, if you believe that dignity, strength, and love don't always shout, then you are Nora, and maybe, just maybe, there's a Connor out there learning how to love like that, too. If this story moved you, the next one goes even deeper. See you there. Subscribe for more true love stories that whisper before they roar.